This is Blocking Your Awakening Yogananda's final warning. Have you ever felt that you're just one step away from complete spiritual awakening, but something invisible keeps you chained? Imagine for a moment that after years of meditation, spiritual study, and selfless service, you discover that the last obstacle doesn't come from the external world, but from something much more subtle, something that hides behind your own spiritual practices. In the next few minutes, I will reveal to you the most dangerous trap on the spiritual path, one that even the most sincere seekers fail to detect. Paramhansa Yogananda warned us about this with urgency because he understood that this is the last thread that binds us to suffering. Stay with me, because what you're about to discover could free you forever. The most subtle trap of the spiritual path. Dear seeker, allow me to ask you a sincere question that reaches into the depths of your heart. Have you experienced that sensation of advancing spiritually, of feeling more inner peace, of understanding deeper truths, and yet something within you whispers that there's still something holding you back? Perhaps you meditate regularly, have read sacred texts, serve others with love, and certainly feel more tranquility than before. But despite all this apparent progress, there exists a silent barrier, something so subtle that it keeps your soul separated from that divine stillness, from that unshakable inner freedom you so yearn for. What exactly is it that keeps us chained when we've already advanced so far on the path? It's a trap so refined, so expertly disguised, that even the most dedicated devotees fall into it without realizing. This trap doesn't reside outside of you, in the temptations of the material world. No, dear friend, this trap lives within you, in the most hidden corners of your spiritual psyche. It's what the masters call the spiritual ego. This is the ego that hides behind sacred knowledge, behind holy practices, behind the illusion of being more awakened than others. And this, dear soul, is the final and most dangerous illusion of all. It's the voice that whispers with apparent sweetness, "You are special, you are progressing faster than others," or even, "You have achieved something great on your spiritual path." But the absolute truth is this: as long as there exists an I that takes credit, that claims ownership over spiritual achievements, the soul remains in captivity. Paramhansa Yogananda, that great master of yoga and divine love, specifically warned us about this deadly trap. With profound compassion and wisdom, he declared, "The ego, when spiritualized, is more dangerous than the worldly ego." Why is it more dangerous? Because now the ego camouflages itself behind good actions and spiritual practices, making itself practically invisible to our conscious perception. It becomes like a master spy working from the shadows, sabotaging our progress while appearing to be our most faithful ally. The deceptive nature of spiritual ego. At first glance, the ego may seem easy to identify. We normally associate it with blatant pride, worldly arrogance, or the desire for fame and recognition on the material plane. But the ego is a master of disguise, and it's never more dangerous than when it dresses itself in the robes of spiritual enlightenment. Observe how this subtle mechanism works. When a seeker begins to meditate deeply and experiences moments of genuine peace, when they begin to understand higher truths or have mystical experiences, an apparently innocent thought arises: "I am becoming spiritual." Slowly, without even noticing it, the I begins to claim ownership over these divine experiences. This is the birth of the spiritual ego. Yogananda warned us with paternal love. When the ego becomes spiritualized, it is more dangerous than the worldly ego. Why this crucial difference? Because now the ego hides behind the very practices that are meant to dissolve it. It becomes a spiritual parasite that feeds on our sacred achievements. The spiritualized ego whispers thoughts like, "I meditate better than others, I understand God more deeply than those around me, my spiritual practice is superior," or even, "I am humble," but always referring back to the I. And here, dear seeker, is where the most refined test of all begins. We must learn to detect this disguised ego with profound sincerity and ruthless awareness. Because no matter how advanced our practice becomes, if the sense of "I did this, I achieved that" remains, we continue bound to the wheel of subtle suffering. The ego wants credit for devotion. It wants to pose as that which cannot be anyone's possession, the grace of God. But the liberating truth is that nothing on the spiritual path is truly achieved by you. Everything that is real is received through total surrender. The moment you think, I have achieved something spiritual, stop and remember. The soul advances not through pride, but through complete dissolution of the separate self in the infinite ocean of divine love. The unmistakable mark of true sanctity, authentic humility. Now that we understand the trap of spiritual ego, let's explore its radiant opposite, true humility, which is the unmistakable mark of an authentic saint. Paramhansa Yogananda used to say frequently, the greater the saint, the more humble he becomes. And why does this happen? Because the closer one draws to God, the more clearly one realizes that everything, each breath, each thought, each spiritual experience, is not the result of personal effort alone, but divine grace flowing through us like a river flowing through a channel. True humility doesn't mean thinking less of yourself or belittling yourself. It means knowing, from the depth of your soul, that you are nothing without God and everything with Him. It's a quiet and sweet awareness that all power, all wisdom, all joy comes from a higher source that infinitely transcends us. The humble heart doesn't say, look how far I've come, but whispers with gratitude, thank you, Lord, for having brought me this far. It's the difference between the ego that claims and the soul that gives thanks. Many seekers fall into the destructive habit of comparing themselves with others. They may think silently, I meditate longer than him, I have read more sacred scriptures than her, my spiritual understanding is deeper. But Yogananda reminds us firmly, comparison is the ego's favorite game. In truth, each soul is on its own unique and irreplaceable journey. What truly matters is not how you appear before others, but how sincerely you love and serve God in the intimacy of your heart. The true measure of spiritual progress is not found in external achievements or recognition, but in the depth of your love and the purity of your surrender. To cultivate this sacred humility, begin each day affirming from the depths of your being, Lord, it is you who thinks, feels, and acts through me. Surrender your strengths as well as your weaknesses. Offer your victories and your failures into His loving hands. When you stop claiming spiritual progress as your own and begin to see God as the doer in all things, the ego begins to melt like snow under the spring sun, and what remains is the pure light of the soul, eternally united with the infinite. Why does the ego resist God? Let us now delve deeper, dear seeker, into a fundamental question. Why does the ego resist God? Why is it so difficult to surrender, even when we sincerely yearn for divine union with every fiber of our being? The answer lies in the very nature of the ego. The ego is essentially the sense of separateness, the false but deeply rooted belief that I am this body, I am this name, I am the one who does everything. And the ego, in its primitive cunning, knows instinctively that if it surrenders completely to God, it will cease to exist as a separate identity. That's why it resists with all its might. The ego fears its own dissolution like night fears the dawn. It wants control, wants to be the protagonist of the spiritual story. It wants to be the one who progresses, who achieves, who understands, who is admired, even on the sacred path toward God. But here is where the illusion becomes most dangerous. Because God cannot be possessed like an object. Enlightenment cannot be won like a prize in a competition. It is a gift that is received only when the seeker becomes completely empty of himself, like a vessel that empties itself to be filled with divine nectar. Yogananda expressed this profound truth with perfect clarity. You must kill this little I with a sword of wisdom and merge it in the infinite I. This is not a physical death, but the gentle yet complete dissolution of the ego through awareness, devotion, and total surrender. The ego declares with arrogance, I will reach God through my own power. But the soul knows in silence, only by completely letting go can I be lifted up. It's like a drop of water trying to become the ocean. It cannot cling to its individual and small form. It must let go and merge completely. In the same way, We must be willing to surrender our small self to realize the infinite self. That is the beautiful paradox of the path. The less you remains, the more of God you become. And in that divine forgetting of the separate self, true joy, peace, and freedom begin to flourish, not as something you gained, but as something you always were in your deepest essence. The transformative power of daily self-reflection. Now that we understand how the ego resists God, let's speak of a powerful tool to avoid falling into this subtle trap: conscious daily self-reflection. Paramhansa Yogananda lovingly encouraged his students to live with inner awareness, to observe the mind, emotions, and motives behind their actions like a silent and compassionate witness. This type of reflection isn't about judging yourself harshly or emotionally flagellating yourself. It's about becoming inwardly honest and humble, observing the ego as a silent witness, with compassion and crystal clarity. It's like becoming the loving guardian of your own inner temple. Each night, before sleeping, take a few sacred moments to ask yourself with absolute sincerity: did I act today from love or from pride? Was I trying to impress others with my spirituality, or was I sincerely remembering God? Did my actions flow from the soul or from the desire to appear spiritual? Ask with gentleness, without guilt or shame. This daily review is like cleaning the mirror of the heart, removing dust before it becomes thick and heavy. It's an act of self-love and devotion to truth. Yogananda taught us that the ego is cunning and sophisticated. It doesn't always shout. It often whispers softly. You did well. You're becoming wise. You're different from the rest. Your understanding is superior. These thoughts may seem harmless, even encouraging. But if you listen carefully with the heart, you'll see they're trying to make you the center once again. And where there is ego, God silently steps aside. To avoid this subtle trap, learn to act without attachment to praise or criticism. Serve others without expecting recognition. Meditate not to gain power or personal peace, but to love and be loved by the divine. Let your actions flow from the soul, not from the desire to appear enlightened. Also develop the practice of constant gratitude. When you experience peace in meditation, say immediately, "Thank you, God, for this blessing." When you have a spiritual understanding, offer it back. May this wisdom serve your divine plan. When others recognize your spiritual growth, silently redirect the credit toward the source. It is His grace working through me. Remember, the true seeker doesn't try to be holy. They try to be real. And in that simple and sincere effort to live with absolute truthfulness, the ego's grip slowly loosens, and God's presence begins to shine more intensely within you, like the gentle light of dawn that gradually dissolves the shadows of night. The beauty of letting go, what blossoms when the ego dissolves. Let us now reflect on a beautiful truth, dear soul. What happens when you finally let go of the ego? What awakens within you when the need to be someone important, accomplished, or spiritually superior finally fades like morning mist? Something extraordinary and luminous begins to blossom in that sacred space of surrender. When the I gracefully steps aside, the soul begins to shine in its natural and radiant light. In that silent inner space where there is no pride, comparison, or attachment, you begin to feel a joy that is not of this material world. It's not the joy of achieving something or being recognized by others. It's the pure joy of simply being, of resting in the eternal arms of the divine. Yogananda frequently expressed, "When the little self dies, the soul awakens." This is not a painful death, but a joyful liberation. Imagine the sensation of a heavy burden being lifted from your shoulders after having carried it for lifetimes. When you stop needing to prove yourself, even spiritually, you become truly free. You no longer meditate to become enlightened. You meditate to love God with growing purity. You no longer seek spiritual experiences to feel special. You offer them back to the one who gave them as free gifts. In that complete surrender, your meditation deepens, not because you're trying harder, but because you're trying less. God flows through you like music flows through a perfectly tuned flute. Your words, your actions, your very presence become a channel for divine love and cosmic wisdom, not because you're the one doing it, but because you've gotten out of the way. This is the gentle secret of the saints. They're not great because they try to be great. They're great because they became nothing. And in that sacred nothingness, God became everything. In this state of grace, you live in effortless flow. Problems that once seemed monumental now resolve themselves with divine ease. Relationships become more harmonious because you're not trying to impress or control. Work becomes loving service because you're not seeking personal credit. When you truly let go of the ego, dear friend, you lose nothing real. In fact, you gain the entire universe because you finally remember that you were never separate to begin with. The ego was just an illusion, like waves that seem separate from the ocean but are always an expression of the same infinite water. Join our path of transformation. If this message is resonating deeply in your heart and you feel the call to delve even deeper into these transformative teachings, I cordially invite you to subscribe to the Divine Karma Path channel. Here you'll find a community of sincere souls who, like you, are dedicated to transcending the illusions of ego and awakening to their true divine nature. At Divine Karma Path, we weekly explore the deepest teachings of the great spiritual masters, offer concrete practices for inner transformation, and create a sacred space where each seeker can find support, inspiration, and authentic guidance. You're not alone on this journey. We are a spiritual family walking together toward the light. Subscribe now and activate notifications so you don't miss any teaching that could be the catalyst for your next great evolutionary leap. Your soul will thank you. The final secret: let God be the doer. We now arrive at the very heart of this transformative journey, dear seeker, the final and most liberating teaching of all: let God be the doer. This is the master key that opens the chains of ego once and for all, the one that frees us from the golden prison of separate spiritual identity. Yogananda, in his infinite compassion, gave us a simple but profoundly powerful prayer that can completely revolutionize our life experience. I will reason, I will act, but guide thou my reason, will, and activity to the right path. With these humble but transformative words, the ego bows at the feet of the divine, offering control and allowing God's wisdom to flow through every thought and action. When we see God as the true doer, not only in our morning meditations, but in every breath, every movement, every interaction, life becomes a continuous sacred offering. You're no longer trying to be spiritual. You're simply becoming a clear and purified instrument through which God expresses his infinite love and light. And in that total surrender, a beautiful and liberating change happens. The burden of success and failure completely disappears. You no longer feel the pressure to perform, to impress, or to achieve specific results. You begin to live in effortless flow, like a river that naturally finds its way to the ocean. This surrender is not weakness. It is the highest strength. It's a deep inner knowing that by myself, I can do nothing. But with God, all things are possible. It's the realization that the source of all power, creativity, and love resides not in the small self, but in the infinite consciousness that embraces us all. Whether you're meditating, serving others, working, or simply walking through life, whisper inwardly with devotion, "Not I, but thou." Let this become your constant prayer, your guiding mantra, your silent reminder in every waking moment. Develop the sacred habit of consulting internally before acting. My God, what would you do in my place? And then act from that inner response, not from your personal preferences or ego's fears. When results come, whether apparently successful or challenging, receive them with equanimity. Your will is perfect, Lord. Help me see the hidden blessing in all you permit. This attitude transforms every experience into an opportunity for growth and drawing closer to the divine. And so, dear soul, the final trap is overcome, not by force, but by surrender. Not by striving more intensely, but by letting go more deeply. When God becomes the doer, the ego silently fades away, and you discover the truth that was always there, waiting patiently for you. You are not a separate being trying to reach God. You are a spark of the divine, finally awakening to your eternal home. Dear soul, if this message has touched even a small corner of your heart, take a silent moment now to sit in stillness, breathe deeply, and reflect. The path to God is not a race against time. It's not about doing more, knowing more, or becoming someone great in the eyes of the world. It's about becoming less until only love remains. Don't let it be the spiritual ego, dressed in robes of righteousness, that distracts you from the simple truth. God is found not in pride, but in surrender, not in showing off, but in shining silently from within. Real transformation happens in the intimacy of the heart, in those sacred moments when no one is watching, when there's no audience to impress, when it's just your naked soul before the infinite. It's there, in that beautiful vulnerability, where true spiritual alchemy occurs. If something from this video resonated with your inner journey, I invite you to write in the comments, "I choose surrender over ego," as your offering to this sacred truth. Your words can inspire someone else who is silently walking this path alongside you. Each testimony of truth becomes a light for other travelers in the darkness. Also, let me know in the comments what topic you'd like me to explore in the next video. Would you like to hear more about how to dissolve the ego in daily life? Or perhaps about how to deepen your meditation through divine love? Or maybe a message about the heart's longing for God? It would be an honor to serve your journey through what you most seek to understand. And if you haven't already, I warmly invite you to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share it with anyone whose soul you feel might be silently calling toward the light. Every time you share wisdom, you become part of the Master's mission to elevate and awaken this world with truth and love. May your heart always be filled with grace, humility, and the sweet reminder of the divine as the true doer in all things. Until we meet again on this sacred path. Ye Gurudev. May divine peace dwell eternally in your soul. If this message touched your heart and helped you better understand the journey, remembering that it is part of your karma and spiritual growth, support our work with a super thanks so we can continue creating transformative content with topics that inspire, help people, and bring more light to each life. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel if it resonates with you, and share it with your friends so our message reaches where it's needed.